Lily handed me the folder across the dinner table like she was offering me something sacred. "Look," she said, her voice trembling with relief. 6 months of fighting and I finally have answers. I'm a clinical pharmacist. I've worked the hospital dispensary for 9 years. The moment I unfolded that lab panel and read the header, something cold moved through me, from my chest down to my fingertips. The paper was wrong. The format was wrong. Everything about it was wrong. I kept my face still. I've had years of practice keeping my face still. Lily had always been the one who felt everything loudly. Growing up, she cried at commercials, rescued spiders from the bathtub, and wrote in a journal every single night. I was the older sister with the steady hands, the one who memorized drug interaction tables for fun, the one our mom called when she needed to understand a prescription label. Even now at 32, I was still the one people brought their paperwork to, their insurance forms, their discharge instructions, their questions that scared them too much to ask a doctor directly. But sitting at that dinner table in Lily's apartment, surrounded by the little flameless candles she'd lit to make the evening feel celebratory, I couldn't make sense of what I was holding without the ground dropping out from under her. She'd been sick for over a year, fatigue that sat on her bones like wet concrete, joint pain that moved from her wrists to her knees to her shoulders without warning, a rash that came and went across her cheeks. She'd been to her primary care doctor twice, and both times left with a referral she hadn't followed up on, and a vague instruction to rest more and reduce stress. She worked 60 hours a week at a marketing firm and had a husband, Marcus, who traveled for work 3 weeks out of every month. Resting more was not a sentence that fit into her life, so she'd found Thrive Wellness Institute. A friend of a friend had mentioned it. Their website was immaculate, soft green tones, testimonials from women who looked healthy and radiant, a team page with photos of practitioners in crisp white coats standing in front of walls of framed certificates. They offered comprehensive lab panels, personalized treatment protocols, IV nutritional therapy, herbal medicine, and what their homepage called root cause resolution. The intake appointment alone had cost $400. By the time I sat down at her dinner table that night, Lily had spent $11,000 there over 6 months. She'd been told she had chronic Lyme disease. I looked at the lab panel again. Then I looked at the diagnosis letter beneath it, printed on Dick cream paper with a clinic seal embossed at the top. Then I looked at the treatment protocol, 3 pages long, listing 18 different supplements she was currently taking, an IV drip she received twice a week, and a dietary elimination plan that had her avoiding 47 foods. I set the folder down very carefully. "You've been taking all of these?" I asked, keeping my voice light, conversational, the way I talk to patients when I need more information before I can say anything real. "Every single one," she said proudly. "Dr. Harlow said the protocol is aggressive but necessary for stage 2 chronic Lyme. She said most mainstream doctors dismiss it because they don't understand it, but she's been treating it for 20 years. Marcus was at the other end of the table, refilling his water glass, half listening, the tired smile of a man who had watched his wife spend months suffering and was relieved that something finally seemed to be helping. I picked up the supplement list again. My eyes moved down it with the same automatic precision I use when I'm verifying a medication order at 3 in the morning. Licorice root extract, high-dose vitamin D, berberine, artemisinin, cat's claw tincture, NAC, high-dose B6. I stopped at 2 items near the bottom of the page. St. John's wort and SAMe, taken together at the doses listed. The temperature in my chest dropped another 10 degrees. "Lily," I said slowly, "are you taking anything else? Any prescription medications? Even something over the counter?" She tilted her head. "Just the Zoloft I've been on for 2 years. Why?" I set the paper down. I picked up my water glass and took one measured sip. I looked at Marcus. He had put down his fork. "Can I talk to you for a second?" I said to him. "In the kitchen." Lily laughed. "You two are so weird. What is going on?" 2 minutes, I said. "I just need to check something with him about Mom's birthday. I forgot to mention it earlier. It was a terrible lie." She knew it was a terrible lie. But something in my face must have made her stay seated because she just reached for the bread basket while Marcus followed me around the corner into the kitchen where the door didn't quite close. I turned to face him and lowered my voice to just above a whisper. The supplements she's on, I said. 2 of them are contraindicated with Zoloft. Seriously, contraindicated. St. John's wort and SAM both increase serotonin. Combined with her antidepressant at these doses, she is at risk for serotonin syndrome. Marcus stared at me. What does that mean? It means her body could have too much serotonin. It starts with agitation, confusion, a rapid heartbeat. It can escalate to seizures. It can be fatal. The color left his face so completely and so fast that I reached out and put a hand on the counter between us in case he needed something solid nearby. She's been taking these for how long? He asked. 6 months, according to the folder. She hasn't had any of those symptoms, not yet. Or she has, and she attributed them to the Lyme. Has she seemed more anxious lately? Restless? Has she mentioned her heart racing? He was quiet for 4 full seconds. She told me last week she's been having trouble sleeping because her heart feels like it's going too fast sometimes. She said Dr. Harlow told her it was a detox response. I closed my eyes for one breath. Just one. Marcus, that's not a detox response. He pressed both hands flat on the counter. Are you sure about all of this? I have a doctorate in pharmacy. I verify drug and supplement interactions every single day. I am sure. He looked at the wall for a moment, processing. Then he looked at me with the particular expression of someone watching a version of reality they trusted beginning to dissolve. So this Lyme diagnosis, I need to look at everything more carefully before I say anything definitive. But that lab panel she showed me is not formatted like any legitimate diagnostic lab I've ever seen. The chronic Lyme diagnosis itself is contested in mainstream medicine, but more importantly, no accredited lab produces results that look like this. And whoever gave her this protocol didn't check her medication list. She gave them her full history at intake. She told me she filled out 12 pages of forms. Then someone saw Zoloft on that list and prescribed St. John's wort anyway. Either they didn't know, which means they're not qualified, or they knew and didn't care. From the dining room, Lily called out, "Is everything okay in there? The pasta's getting cold." Marcus looked at me. I looked at Marcus. "We can't tell her here," I said quietly. "Not like this. She's been holding on to this diagnosis for 6 months. It's given her an explanation for everything she's been suffering. If I pull that away from her at the dinner table without anything to replace it, she'll fall apart, and she won't trust me. So what do we do? First thing tomorrow, I need her to stop the St. John's wort and the SAM. Tonight, if possible, I'll frame it as something I noticed professionally, something I want to double-check. Nothing alarming. Then I'm going to make some calls and get her a real appointment. A rheumatologist. This week if I can manage it." He nodded slowly, the way someone nods when the ground under them has shifted and they're still finding their footing. We walked back into the dining room. Lily looked at us both with her sharp, knowing eyes. She'd always been able to read a room. "You're both terrible liars," she said. I sat down across from her and folded my hands on the table. I'd spent 9 years learning to deliver information to people in the exact amount they could receive at one time. "I noticed something in your supplement list," I said. "A couple of the things you're taking interact with your Zoloft in a way I want to look into before you take them again. It's probably nothing serious, but I'd feel better if you paused 2 of them until I can review the dosing properly." She frowned. "Dr. Harlow knows I'm on Zoloft." "I know, and I'm sure she thought carefully about the protocol. I just want to double-check for my own peace of mind. You know how I am." She did know how I was. She rolled her eyes affectionately and said, "Fine. Send me a text telling me which ones to stop and I'll set them aside." I texted her from the bathroom before we finished dinner. She texted back a thumbs up and a slightly exasperated heart emoji. I drove home that night with both hands on the wheel and the quiet certainty that things were about to get much more complicated. The next morning, I called Dr. Nina Patel, a rheumatologist I'd worked with at the hospital for 4 years. I explained the situation in the clipped, factual language we use when one clinician is asking another for a serious favor. "Send her to me Thursday," Nina said. "I'll fit her in." Then I opened my laptop and spent 3 hours on Thrive Wellness Institute. The certificates on their team page weren't from any accredited medical or naturopathic institution I could verify. The lab panel format Lily had shown me matched no QIA-certified laboratory. Their website listed no supervising physician. Their terms and conditions, buried 7 pages deep in a downloadable PDF, contained a single line in 8-point font. Services provided are for wellness support and educational purposes only and do not constitute medical diagnosis or treatment. I dug further. On a consumer health forum, I found a thread about them from 8 months prior. A woman named Patricia had written 3 paragraphs about being told she had chronic Lyme after a single blood test at Thrive. She'd spent $9,000 on treatment before a real doctor discovered she had an underactive thyroid. Another commenter named Brenda said the same clinic had told her teenager he had heavy metal toxicity. A third wrote only, "They told me I was fine." I wasn't. That last one hit me somewhere specific. I reached out to Patricia through the forum's private message system. She responded within an hour. Her story poured out in long, run-on paragraphs, the kind of writing that comes from someone who has been waiting to tell it to the right person. She'd complained to the state health department 9 months ago. She'd been told there was insufficient evidence to take action and that the clinic operated as a wellness provider, not a medical facility, which placed them in a regulatory gray area. I asked if she still had her paperwork. She had everything. I called 2 more names from that thread over the next 2 days. Both of them had similar stories. Diagnoses that didn't hold up, thousands of dollars spent. One woman, Janet, had stopped taking blood pressure medication on the advice of Thrive's lead practitioner, a woman named Dr. Serena Harlow, who held a degree from an unaccredited online institution. Janet had experienced a hypertensive crisis 3 months later and spent 4 days in the ICU. I contacted our state's medical board licensing division and explained what I'd found. The investigator I spoke to, a man named Dennis Cho, listened carefully. "This is the 3rd complaint we've received about this facility in the past year," he said. "We've been building a file. What you have could push this over the threshold for a formal investigation." I spent 4 days compiling everything. Patricia's records, Brenda's photos of her son's treatment plan, Janet's hospital discharge summary, which she scanned and emailed me with shaking hands and a note that said, "Thank you for taking this seriously." I added Lily's folder, her invoice history, her supplement protocol, the interaction documentation I'd pulled from 3 peer-reviewed pharmacology databases. I sent all of it to Dennis Cho with a cover letter that took me 3 drafts to get right. I also called a health reporter at the regional newspaper named Caleb Suh, who had written a series on unlicensed medical providers 2 years prior. He answered on the second ring. "Send me everything you have," he said, before I'd finished explaining. I've been looking for a way back into this story. Meanwhile, Lily went to see Dr. Patel on Thursday. I drove her. She was quiet in the passenger seat, her hands folded in her lap, looking out the window at the highway in a way that told me she was bracing for something without knowing what she was bracing for. "If this doctor tells me there's nothing wrong with me, I don't know what I'll do," she said softly. "Nina is very good," I said. "She's going to look at everything." Thrive spent 6 months with me. They ran every test imaginable. They found something real. I kept my eyes on the road. "I know you believe that." She looked at me then. "You don't." I took a breath. "I think you've been genuinely sick. I think your symptoms are real. I think you deserve a real diagnosis." She was quiet for the rest of the drive. Dr. Patel spent 90 minutes with Lily. She reviewed every document from Thrive, asked careful questions, conducted a thorough physical examination, and ordered a new blood panel through the hospital's certified lab. She also noted in Lily's new chart that the malar rash Lily had been experiencing for over a year across the bridge of her nose and cheeks was a presentation she wanted to evaluate further, and that Lily's reported photosensitivity and joint pain created a clinical picture she found significant. When the lab results came back 4 days later, Dr. Patel called Lily directly. I was sitting in Lily's living room when the call came in. I watched my sister's face go through several expressions in the span of 2 minutes. Confusion, stillness, a kind of slow, settling grief. She lowered the phone and looked at me. "Lupus," she said. "She thinks it's lupus. She wants me to come in tomorrow." I had suspected it since the night at the dinner table. The rash, the joint pain, the fatigue, the way her symptoms moved and shifted, it fit the pattern cleanly in a way the Lyme diagnosis never had. But knowing it and hearing her say the word out loud were two different things. "That's treatable," I said immediately. "It's very manageable with the right medication. Nina is one of the best in the city for this." Lily set her phone down on the cushion beside her. She stared at the coffee table for a long moment. "I've been sick for a year and a half," she said quietly. "I lost $11,000. I damaged my body with supplements that didn't belong in it. And the whole time I actually had something that a real doctor could have caught." Her voice didn't crack. She just sounded very, very tired. "Someone told me I had Lyme," she said. "I believed them because I was desperate and exhausted, and they had an office that looked real and a name with doctor in front of it, and I wanted answers so badly that I didn't ask the right questions." "They were designed to look real," I said. "That's not your failure, that's their fraud." She looked at me then, and something shifted in her eyes. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Since the dinner. I wasn't certain about everything until the blood work came back, but I suspected from the moment I saw that lab panel." She pressed her lips together. "You sat at my table and ate my pasta and waited. I needed to get you to a real doctor first. I didn't want to take something away from you without giving you something true to replace it." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "How many other people has she done this to?" The question settled in the room between us like something with weight. "At least 4 others that I found," I said. "Probably more." She looked at me steadily. "Then don't let her keep doing it." I didn't. The State Health Department investigation, combined with the documentation I provided, was enough to trigger an unannounced inspection of Thrive Wellness Institute on a Tuesday morning 3 weeks later. Dennis Cho coordinated the visit with the State Medical Board and the Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. I was not present, but Patricia was. She had driven 2 hours to stand on the sidewalk across the street because she needed to see it happen. She texted me a photo of the official vehicles in the parking lot. The text beneath it said only, "Finally." Caleb's piece ran in the Sunday paper with a photo of Thriv's storefront and the headline that asked whether wellness clinics were the new predatory medicine. He quoted Lily, who had agreed to be named after I'd asked her twice and given her every opportunity to decline. He quoted Patricia and Janet, both named, both clear-eyed and precise in their accounts. He quoted 3 medical professionals who explained in plain language what unlicensed Lyme diagnosis does to patients whose actual conditions go untreated. Serena Harlow's response, delivered through a publicist the clinic apparently retained, said that Thrive operated fully within wellness guidelines and that client satisfaction was their highest priority. The article generated 47 letters to the editor. Several of them were from people who recognized their own experience in the story. A healthcare fraud attorney named Daniel Park filed a civil suit on behalf of 5 plaintiffs, including Lily and Janet, 3 months later. The case moved slowly, the way civil cases do. But it moved. Marcus attended every hearing. Sometimes he brought coffee. He held Lily's hand in the hallway outside the courtroom, and I watched him do it, and thought about how a crisis either hollows a marriage out or fills it with something denser and more permanent. Theirs was being filled. The settlement came 11 months after the initial complaint. Serena Harlow was permanently barred from operating any health or wellness business in the state. Restitution was ordered for each plaintiff. It didn't cover everything Lily had lost, in time or money or the particular kind of grief that comes from having believed something completely, but it was real and it was documented and it had her name attached to it. The night the settlement was finalized, Lily called me and cried for the first time since everything had started. Not the quiet, contained kind of crying she'd been doing for months. The full kind. The kind that meant something was finally releasing. I sat on my kitchen floor and listened to her and didn't say anything for a while, because sometimes the most useful thing you can do for someone is simply refuse to fill the silence. Lily's lupus diagnosis took several months to stabilize. Dr. Herduria, Pottle tried 2 different medication combinations before they found one that worked well with her body. There were hard weeks and better weeks and a few weeks that were simply endurance. She came off the Zoloft eventually, under careful supervision, when she felt ready. She started working with a therapist who specialized in chronic illness, a quiet woman named Dr. Amara Jones, who Lily described as both deeply kind and annoyingly perceptive. I saw Lily every week. Sometimes we cooked together. Sometimes we just sat on her couch and watched competitive baking shows and didn't talk about any of it. Once, she asked me why I hadn't told her the truth at the dinner table that night, and I told her exactly what I'd told her before, that I needed to give her something true before I took away something she'd been holding on to. She thought about that for a moment and then nodded. "I would have fought you," she said. "If you told me at the table that the diagnosis was fake, I would have defended them." "I know," I said, "because I needed it to be real." "I know that too." She leaned her head back against the couch cushion and looked at the ceiling. "The strangest part," she said, "is that I'm almost grateful for it. Not for them, not for what they did, but for the fact that finding out the truth led me to Nina and to the real diagnosis and to treatment that's actually working. If I'd kept believing I had Lyme, I would have kept paying them and kept getting sicker and never known why." "You would have figured it out eventually." "Would I? I was so tired, Sarah. I was so tired of fighting and not getting anywhere. If you hadn't looked at that folder with your pharmacist brain and your stubborn face," she paused, "I might have just kept going." I didn't say anything for a moment. "I looked at it because you handed it to me," I said finally. "You wanted me to see it. Some part of you already knew something wasn't right." She considered that. "Maybe," she said. Outside the window, the light was doing the particular thing it does in late afternoon in October, going gold and sideways and a little bit melancholy. Lily's cat, a fat gray tabby named Biscuit, walked across the back of the couch between us without acknowledging either of us. "I've been thinking about going back to school," Lily said. "For what? Patient advocacy? Something like that. I keep thinking about all those other people in that forum. The ones who didn't have a sister with a pharmacy degree sitting across the table from them." I looked at her profile, the familiar line of her jaw, the way she still had a slight rash across her cheeks even now, lighter than before, but present, a quiet reminder of what her body was and what it was managing. "That would be a good thing to do," I said. "You'd have to help me with the science parts, obviously." She smiled. It was the same smile she'd had at the dinner table when she handed me the folder, that trembling, hoping expression, but different now, less fragile. Something underneath it had been reinforced. Marcus appeared in the doorway holding 3 mugs. "Decaf?" he said. Lily reached for one without looking. Their hands met around the handle for a second before he let go. I took my mug and held it with both hands and felt, for the first time in almost a year, something that wasn't vigilance. Something quieter, the particular kind of ease that comes when you've told the truth and the truth has done its work and the person you love is sitting beside you, still intact, still themselves, maybe more themselves than they were before. Families don't stay together because nothing goes wrong. They stay together because of what they choose to do when it does. If this story stayed with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more stories about the people who fight for the ones they love, make sure you subscribe so you never miss what comes next.